Welcome to Auto News Talk. If you follow the automotive industry, you might feel like we are all suffering from uh, a massive collective hangover.
That's a very vivid way to put it.
Right, because for the last several years, it really felt like a nonstop party celebrating this all-electric, software-defined future. Everything was digital, everything was battery-powered.
Mhm.
But looking at the stack of reports we have in front of us, the music has definitely stopped, the lights have come on, and the bill has arrived.
And the bill is significantly higher than anyone expected. I mean, we aren't just looking at minor course corrections here.
Yeah.
We are analyzing a moment of massive recalibration for the entire sector.
Yeah.
The industry sprinted toward a future that consumers and, quite frankly, the technology itself just weren't quite ready for. Now, that aggressive push has collided head-on with the hard reality of the present.
The stakes here are incredible. Usually when we talk about industry shifts on the show, we're talking about market share moving, a percentage point or two, a design change.
Right, incremental stuff.
Exactly. But here, we are seeing billions in financial losses. We're seeing recalls affecting millions of vehicles. And there's this desperate scramble at the dealership level just to save a few minutes of time.
It really is a war being fought on three fronts simultaneously.
Okay, lay that out for us. What's the map look like?
So you have the strategic front, where the big manufacturers are realizing they moved way too fast. Then you have the technological front.
The car is a computer.
Precisely. The car as a computer is causing massive scale issues. And then down in the trenches, you have the operational front at the dealerships. They're just trying to hold the line on profitability.
So let's start at the top of the food chain on that strategic front, because there is no bigger story dominating the conversation than the absolute crater in the financials over at Stellantis.
It's staggering.
One of our main sources breaks down their latest filings, and we are looking at a net loss of 22.3 billion euros. And tied to that, a write-down of roughly $26 billion. Now, help me out here, because 26 billion is a number so big it almost stops making sense. What does a write-down of that magnitude actually mean for a car company?
It's momentous. For anyone listening who might not be a CFO, a write-down essentially means the company is admitting that the assets they hold are worth significantly less than they originally thought.
So they just lose value.
Basically, yes. In this context, it's an admission that the investments they made, likely in EV development, tooling, brand new platforms, those aren't going to generate the return they promised investors.
Wow.
It is effectively money vanishing into thin air because the reality on the ground changed so drastically.
That is not a rounding error. I mean, that's the GDP of a small country.
It is.
And looking at the reports, the CEO, Antonio Filosa, he didn't try to sugarcoat it too much. He was actually pretty blunt. The source quotes him admitting they, quote, overestimated the pace of the energy transition.
That single admission is the smoking gun for the whole industry. It is a very rare moment of corporate honesty. I mean, they bet the farm on a rapid shift to EVs, assuming that regulations and consumer demand would just move in lockstep.
But the buyers just weren't there.
The demand simply didn't show up at the scale they needed to justify that massive upfront investment.
But hold on. If you are $26 billion in the hole on a specific strategy, you don't just keep digging. You have to pivot.
You have to stop the bleeding.
Right. And the source details that Stellantis is rolling out this new campaign called Freedom to Choose. Now, to me, that sounds like a very polite, marketing-friendly way of saying, we're going back to gas because that's what pays our bills. Is that too cynical of a read?
It's not cynical at all.
Yeah.
It's just reading between the lines. It is absolutely a pivot to pragmatism. The report makes it clear they aren't abandoning EVs entirely.
Sure.
But if you look at the product roadmap in these documents, the emphasis has shifted dramatically. They are doubling down on internal combustion and hybrids for the vehicles that actually generate profit.
The trucks, the SUVs.
The muscle cars, yeah.
Yeah.
The documentation specifically mentions a continuation of the Hemi V8s and the turbocharged six-cylinder engines.
Oh, and the imminent refresh of the Pacifica minivan. I saw that in the briefing.
The Pacifica is crucial here. It's a cash cow for them. But financially, this whole move is about survival. Another piece of the report notes their net revenues were hammered by pricing declines.
Meaning that they had to put cash on the hood to sell cars?
Exactly. Heavy discounts to move inventory. By shifting the mix back toward gas and hybrids, they are trying to recover those high mileage sales to return to profitability in the coming quarters. They need products on the lot that people want to buy right now not products people might buy in 5 years.
Right. But is this just a Stellantis problem, or are they just the first ones to say the quiet part out loud? Because looking at the other reports in our stack, this feels like a broader kind of Me Too moment for the entire sector.
Well, Stellantis is definitely not alone. A separate source we have points to an industry-wide retreat from this sort of ideological purity. Just look at Porsche.
Oh yeah, the K1 project.
Right. The report details their plans for the K1, which is a massive 3-row SUV project. A few years ago, the press release for that would have screamed, all-electric flagship from the rooftops.
It would have been billed as the ultimate Tesla fighter?
Exactly. But the source indicates it's likely launching with gasoline V6 and V8 power alongside the electric version. That is a huge signal from a brand that is usually on the bleeding edge of performance tech.
If Porsche is keeping the V8 alive for their flagship, that tells you everything you need to know about the high-end market.
Precisely. And we see it with Nissan, too. Another briefing mentions they were splitting the Pathfinder lineup.
Splitting it how? Like different sizes?
Different architectures. It's a fascinating strategy. Nissan is reportedly planning to offer 2 completely different vehicles under the Pathfinder umbrella. You'll get a refreshed unibody crossover for the daily school run, comfortable, efficient. But they're also planning a separate body-on-frame off-road model.
So instead of trying to make one giant electric blob that does everything reasonably well, they are specializing.
Yes. It's about specialization, rather than forcing an electric powertrain into every single use case. They're realizing the person who wants to go off-roading needs a totally different tool than the person commuting to an office. And for the rough stuff, gas is still the better tool.
It's amazing how even the companies that practically define the future seem to be hitting walls. The documents bring up Tesla and Volvo in this context, too.
They do. Despite all the hype about robo-taxes, the regulatory filings in one of our sources show Tesla has no permits or logged autonomous miles in California for that specific deployment.
So the reality isn't matching the pitch.
Right. And Volvo is having to retrofit the EX30 with vehicle-to-load capabilities just to stay competitive in the current market. It shows that the promised future is hitting some very boring, very real regulatory and technical walls.
There was one other note on Stellantis from the main report that I found really interesting and maybe a little concerning regarding the global market. They are looking to China for help.
This is their if you can't beat them, join them strategy. To fight the aggressive price wars in Europe, the source says Stellantis is looking at using Chinese EV technology for their European brands.
Wow.
They realize they simply can't develop affordable EV tech fast enough or cheap enough on their own. So they might just buy it off the shelf to stop the bleeding.
That feels like a massive admission of defeat on the engineering front, doesn't it? Basically saying, we can't build it cheap enough, so we'll just buy it from our biggest competitors.
It's pragmatic, but yes, it has to sting. It highlights just how far behind the legacy automakers fell while they were trying to protect their gas engine margins.
Okay, so that's the strategic front. The big bosses are pivoting back to what works. But this is where it gets tricky, I think. Even if you stick with the workhorse vehicles, the big trucks, the heavy SUVs, you run into the second front of this war. The technology front.
Because a pickup truck isn't just a truck anymore.
Exactly. It's a data center on wheels. And this brings us to a separate report we have on Ford, which is a perfect, frankly terrifying example of what happens when software scaling goes wrong. We love to talk about platforms, using the same code across 10 different models to save money.
The economies of scale.
Right. But the flip side is, if you have a bug, you don't have it in one car. You have it in millions.
And in this specific case, the source notes it's 4.3 million vehicles. Ford issued a recall for 4.3 million pickups and SUVs in the U.S.
Okay, I want to be really clear about what is breaking here because it sounds technical, but the physical result is incredibly dangerous. What exactly is the ITM?
The culprit is a piece of software called the Integrated Trailer Module, or ITM. This isn't the touchscreen freezing or the radio glitching. This is the module that manages the crucial electrical signals between your truck and whatever you are towing.
Like a boat, a camper.
A horse trailer,
Yeah.
heavy equipment, exactly.
So walk me through the failure scenario based on the report. I'm heading to the lake, I've got my boat hooked up, I'm driving down the highway. What happens?
Well, the report states the module can lose communication with the vehicle entirely, often right at startup. So let's say you start the truck, you pull out of the driveway, and suddenly the trailer has no turn signals.
Dangerous enough.
But much worse, it has no brakes.
That is a nightmare scenario. If I'm towing 5,000 pounds and I have to make an emergency stop.
Your truck has to stop the combined weight of the truck and the boat all by itself. The source points out this drastically increases crash risk, not only because your stopping distance essentially doubles, but because the driver behind you has no idea you're braking, because your trailer lights are completely dead.
And because Ford uses this software platform across the board, this isn't just an isolated F-150 problem.
No, and this is where the platform strategy bites back hard. The report lists the affected models, and it's their entire heavy hitter lineup. It's the F-150, the F-250 Super Duty, the Lincoln Navigator,
Well,
the Expedition, the Maverick, the Ranger, even the E-Transit commercial vans. This is the danger of shared architecture. You write the code once, you deploy it everywhere. You make a mistake once, it breaks everywhere.
the source does mention there haven't been crashes or injuries reported yet, which feels like a miracle considering there are over 400 potentially related incidents already logged.
It's a ticking clock.
But here is my practical question. If this is a software issue, do I have to take my truck to the dealer? Because 4.3 million trucks showing up at the service center sounds like a logistical apocalypse.
It would be impossible. But here is the silver lining, and it highlights how much the industry has changed for the better in some ways. The fix isn't a mechanic with a wrench crawling under the dashboard. The report says it's an over-the-air update, an OTA.
So Ford just beams the fix to the truck like an iPhone update.
Exactly. They can patch 4.3 million vehicles without clogging up the dealership service base. If this were a mechanical relay failure, it would cost Ford billions in labor and parts. Because it's code, the development cost is high, but the logistics of deploying it are much simpler.
But wait, OTA updates aren't instantaneous. They roll out in waves, right?
Correct.
So until that update actually hits my specific truck, am I just driving a hazard?
That is the dangerous gap in the system. The advice given in the report is incredibly low-tech. The official advice is basically, get out of the truck and look. Manually check your trailer lights every single time you start up. Do not trust the dashboard indicators.
Get out and look. That's the cutting-edge safety advice for an $80,000 truck.
Sometimes the old ways are the only backup we have when the code fails.
So we have the manufacturers losing billions on strategy and recalling millions on software. It sounds pretty chaotic at the top. But if we zoom in to the dealership level, what you call the operational front, we see a completely different kind of battle. They aren't fighting for billions, they're fighting for minutes.
Minutes and pennies. When the manufacturers are squeezing margins, and we know they are, based on Stellantis' financials, the dealerships have to run a much tighter ship. We have two separate reports here on new tech integrations that are trying to remove friction from the car business.
Let's talk about the front of house first, the sales floor. One source details this integration between VIN Solutions and Toyota and Lexus systems. Now, for people who don't sell cars for a living, this might sound like boring back-end administrative stuff. Why does this matter to you and me, the people actually buying the car?
Anyone who's bought a car recently knows this pain intimately. You spend 2 hours at home, online, building your perfect car. You pick the trim, you value your trade-in, you set up the financing terms, you hit submit, and you think you're done.
Yeah, you feel accomplished.
Then you walk into the dealership, and the sales manager sits you down and asks you the exact same questions, because he has to type it all manually into his local system.
I hate that. It makes you feel like the entire online process was a complete waste of time. It feels like they don't respect your effort.
It effectively was a waste of time. In the industry, that's called double entry. But the report explains that VIN Solutions, which is owned by Cox Automotive, they've integrated directly with Toyota's SmartPath and Lexus's Monogram systems. It creates a one-click handoff.
So the data actually flows from my couch to their desk.
Correct. The customer's entire deal structure moves from the Toyota customer-facing system directly into VIN Solutions' Deal Central Desk tool. No retyping. No, let me go ask my manager to confirm your trade-in.
The source actually puts a hard number on this. It says early testing shows it saves up to 15 minutes per deal.
And 15 minutes is an absolute eternity in a busy dealership on a Saturday afternoon. If you sell 100 cars a month, that's 25 hours of staff time saved. But more importantly, it saves the customer's patience.
Yeah, the frustration factor.
Exactly. There was a quote in the report from a manager at Lexus of Akron-Canton that really nailed it. He said, "This tool reduces confirmation steps and lets his staff actually talk to the customer instead of just staring at a computer screen confirming data points."
It removes the administrative wall between the human beings. I really like that. But efficiency isn't just about selling the car faster. It's also about paying the bills efficiently. Which brings us to another operational report we have on the back office. This is Reynolds and Reynolds partnering with Corpay.
This one is definitely less sexy, but arguably it's more critical for cash flow. It's about digitizing accounts payable. It is genuinely shocking how many multi-million-dollar dealerships still pay their daily vendors with paper checks.
Why? Is it just deeply ingrained habit? Or is the dealership tech really that bad?
It's a mix of habit and very old legacy software systems that simply don't talk to modern banking APIs. But paper checks are slow, they're expensive to print and mail, and they're surprisingly risky regarding fraud.
Well, sure, because your routing number and your account number are printed right there on the bottom of the piece of paper for anyone in the mailroom to see.
Exactly. This partnership, detailed in the report, fixes that in two main ways. First is security. When the dealership pays a vendor through this new system, the money actually comes from a custodial account managed by Corpay. The vendor never sees the dealership's actual bank details. It completely masks the source.
That's a smart layer of protection. But the source also mentions a financial incentive. It sounds like they actually make money by paying their bills.
Yes, and this is the part that dealership controllers absolutely love. It's called virtual card rebates. The system encourages the dealership to pay vendors using single-use virtual credit cards. If the vendor accepts that virtual card, the dealership earns a cash rebate, which is usually a percentage of the transaction.
So instead of paying $1 to print and mail a physical check, they might earn $10 back just for paying a bill they owed anyway.
Precisely. It turns the accounts payable department from a pure cost center into a tiny revenue generator. In an environment where net profits are down industry-wide, like we saw so clearly with Stellantis, finding free money hidden in your back office is a massive win.
However, I have to be the skeptic here. The source doesn't paint it as a flawless magic wand. It leaves some open questions.
No, it's a tool, not a miracle. What the report doesn't explicitly answer is the cost structure. We don't know the exact subscription costs for the Reynolds platform, which could easily eat into those cash rebates.
Right.
And there is always the practical issue of vendors who simply refuse to accept credit cards because they don't want to pay the merchant processing fees. So the rollout reality might be bumpier than the pitch.
Okay, so let's pull back and look at this entire map we've drawn today. We have the massive strategic pivot at Stellantis. We have the software execution risks at Ford. And we have these micro-efficiency plays at the dealership level. What is the common thread tying all these sources together?
I think we are witnessing the end of what I would call the ideological phase of the automotive industry and the beginning of the pragmatic phase.
Break that down for me. What do you mean by ideological?
For the last 5 years, the industry was driven by a vision of what cars should be. Electric, autonomous, completely digital. Stellantis admitting they overestimated the transition speed that is the ultimate reality check. They are moving away from what investors want to hear and getting back to what customers actually buy.
So selling gas trucks today to fund the research of tomorrow, rather than bankrupting the company trying to force tomorrow to happen today.
Exactly. The report on Porsche and Nissan reinforces that same pragmatic pivot. And the second major theme here is the consequence of connected platforms. Ford shows us that high-tech features come with incredibly high-stakes risks. You can't just bend metal and build a truck anymore. You have to maintain a massive software ecosystem.
And that leads right into the third theme, which is friction removal. Whether it's Vin Solutions saving 15 minutes on a sales desk or Corpay digitizing checks for rebates, everyone is desperately trying to strip out inefficiency because the easy money of the post-pandemic boom is completely gone.
There's a really fascinating tension across these reports, though.
Oh.
Yeah, think about it. Stellantis is saying we need to sell more legacy vehicles, our trucks and SUVs, because that's the safe, profitable bet. But look at the Ford report. The safe bet, the F-Series workhorse, is the exact vehicle causing them the biggest technological headache.
That is deeply ironic. Even the old-school formats are so complex now that they carry the exact same software risk as the brand-new EVs.
There is simply no low-tech option anymore. Extreme complexity is the new baseline.
So for the person listening to this right now, whether you work in the industry or you are just someone who drives a car and is thinking about your next purchase, what is the practical takeaway here? Why should you care about a Stellantis write-down or a dealership's back-end software?
For you, the consumer, it means the buying experience is going to get more varied and your choices are going to stick around longer. The rigid EV-only mandate is softening across the board. You're going to see updated gas and hybrid models hitting the lots that are better, more efficient, and more specialized for your actual life. And hopefully the buying process is a little faster.
But it also means we have a lot more responsibility as vehicle owners.
Absolutely. The Ford recall proves that your car is a living, breathing digital device. You cannot ignore those software update notifications on your dashboard. You have to treat your truck the way you treat your smartphone. Keep it updated, or critical systems might literally stop working.
That is the new reality. We are driving computers, and sometimes computers crash. And sometimes the massive companies building them need a hard reboot too.
That's the bottom line. The winners in this next phase won't be the ones with the coolest, most futuristic concept art. It'll be the ones who can balance the books and keep the code clean.
Keep an eye on your dashboard for those over-the-air updates, and don't be surprised if you see a few more V8 engines on the road than you expected. Think about how much software is actually running the next time you tap your brakes. That brings us to the end of this segment of Auto News Talk. Thanks for joining the conversation, and we'll catch you next time.